Hello everyone, this is Norse. I would like to discuss about humanitarian and compassionate grounds in terms of applying for permanent residence here inside Canada. Please note that when you apply for permanent residence under HNC, you should be inside Canada with the time that you apply. But that doesn't mean that you cannot go out from Canada. You can always be in and out in Canada, or maybe you can even go home if you want. It is not like refugee. Refugee, you can't go home actually. So when do you need to apply for HNC, Humanitarian and Compassionate Ground? Applicants who do not qualify for permanent residence in Canada may be able to qualify under the Humanitarian and Compassionate Grounds, HNC. The humanitarian and compassionate is not an alternative means to apply for residency, rather a pathway under special circumstances. So, who are the eligible people who can apply for HNC? Applicants most likely to have their HNC applications approved will be able to demonstrate that they meet some of the following criteria: being established or settled in Canada, whether you have children or other dependents living with you in Canada that would be affected, having physical or mental health concern. So some of the things that an applicant might give as reasons include: how do you establish or settle here in Canada? Your ties to Canada, including family ties. What would happen if family members were separated? Their physical health or mental health concern. So I remember I did some humanitarian and compassionate grounds with difficult cases, which is one person. She used to have a work permit status, and then she lost her work permit status because of pandemic and also because of not knowing what to do in her application. So I applied for that. Second thing is that if you have some family members who are actually really sick or have chronic illness, then you can always apply because nobody can take care of them. So that's one of the one part to get that application for humanitarian. However, if you have a pending refugee claim, you cannot apply for permanent residence on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. If you had a negative decision from the Immigration and Refugee Board, or IRB, within the last 12 months, you can't apply for permanent residence under humanitarian and compassionate grounds. How long does HNC take to approve in Canada? Usually, the processing takes between 24 and 36 months. However, the waiting time varies from case to case, and your case could take even longer. While you wait for a decision on your application, the Canadian government will allow you to remain in the country. Another question: can I work while waiting for HNC? Making an HNC application does not give an applicant the right to stay in Canada until IRCC decides. A refugee claimant can stay in Canada until the IRB decides their claim, but an HNC applicant can get permission to work or study after their application is approved at first stage. Can I leave after applying for HNC? Yes, you can, but if you are under a removal order and decide to submit an application for permanent residence based on HNC, it will not delay your removal from Canada. You must leave on the specified removal leave. What happens if the HNC application is refused? That's why it's very important that you always have to maintain your status, okay? So if in case you have tourist visa status here, you have to maintain that. So what happens if my HNC application is refused? If your HNC application is unsuccessful, you can apply to the Federal Court of Canada to have the decision reviewed. If the court determines the decision was incorrect or unreasonable, it will be sent back for reconsideration by another HNC officer. What are the 7 humanitarian principles? Humanity, impartiality, neutrality, independence, voluntary service, unity, and universality. These 7 fundamental principles sum up the movement's ethics and are at the core of its approach to helping people in need during armed conflict, natural disasters, and other emergencies. So the most important thing when you apply for HNC is the original police certificate. But since we're applying online now, you can just scan the original certificate, and if in case they want it original, then you can send it by mail. But on the first application by online, you can always send it and scan it, a copy of the original police certificate. What qualifies as humanitarian reason? Therefore, examples of situations where humanitarian situation can be granted, including providing urgent medical care, attending a funeral or visiting a critically ill relative, or assisting in a national disaster relief effort. So the cost of the humanitarian and compassionate application, since it is a permanent residence, is $570. And if you want to put up the right of permanent residence, it will gonna be $1,085. But you can apply for the $570 while waiting for the process. And once the immigration requests for right of PR, then you can actually pay for that. What is the HNC decision? The decision on an HNC application is discretionary. This means that immigration officers have a lot of freedom in deciding this application. So it depends on the officer. But they must base their decisions on the evidence that they must consider all of the evidence as a whole when deciding whether the application is strong enough. What is compassionate reason? Compassionate reasons range from bereavement to weddings to high school commencement and more. We get that life happens outside of your academics, and there may be a time when you can't meet your responsibilities due to something we would consider a compassionate reason. So again, everyone, you can stay in Canada while waiting for your permanent residence under the humanitarian and compassionate ground application, as long as you maintain your legal status. Temporary resident status is valid for a specific period of time, and you must ensure that your status as a temporary resident remains valid while you are in Canada. So in terms of temporary resident permit holders, you can only stay here for every 6 months. But if you want to stay longer than that, then you have no problem to actually apply for extension for temporary resident visa, because you want your TRP or visa to be maintained in order for you to stay here in Canada. But take note, you can always apply for humanitarian and compassionate grounds even if you don't have a status. A lot of my clients, they actually has no status anymore. They've been here for like 5 years, 10 years without status. But again, at the end of the day, if you have the opportunity to keep your status maintained, then I always recommend that you maintain your status if you are a tourist visa holder, or if you get an opportunity to actually restore or maintain your status under the temporary resident permit. It's always the visa that is, they call it tourist visa. So even if you were a permanent resident or you lost that status, if you were a work permit holder and you lost that status, or a temporary resident permit or tourist visa, or even student, there are a lot of people here in Canada who actually lost their status. You can, if you get the opportunity to apply, it depends on the present law or immigration law, then you need to take advantage of maintaining your status as a tourist visa holder. And if you keep on waiting for the permanent residence result, then you can always apply for extension for tourist visa. So make sure that you maintain your status, but again, it's not something that is a dead end. You can actually, but you don't want to actually lose your status to stay here in Canada. So again, this is about humanitarian case. So if you have more questions, please feel free to ask me below or comment, and I will try my best to answer your questions. Again, this is Norris, your immigration consultant. I hope you have a good night. All the best, and God bless. Bye-bye.